I would offer a few tips on how we, as wounded people, could be agents of healing in our homes and in the wider home called the church. And since it is the World Meeting of Families, I brought my own family here. My parents are here, my brother, and my cousins. Okay. Wow. So many people. So let us start with some consideration about wounded hearts. Of course, the heart here is not just an organ within the body. When we talk about wounded hearts, we're talking about wounded persons. All people are wounded. I guess no one here in this assembly could claim, I have never been wounded. All of us have been wounded and continue to experience wounds in our hearts. There are different types of wounds. Some physical, some spiritual, some emotional, some relational, some financial. And there are different causes and different consequences. But whatever the nature might be of a personal wound, it always affects the family and consequently a person's social relationships. All wounds hurt, but wounds are more painful and hurtful when we see our family members suffering. When somebody inflicts a wound on our family member, we are also wounded. They become our own wounds. But most hurtful are the wounds inflicted on someone by his or her own family members. The sacredness of the family is wounded by that. When brothers and sisters fight over money, when relatives fight over a piece of property, and they say, we are fighting for a principle. What type of principle is that? When the piece of land is more important than your brother or sister, but the world calls that principle. But this is the mystery of it all. Even when homes are hurt by wounds, it is also the home that is the privileged place for comforting and healing wounded hearts. The wounds may come from the family, but it is also the family that becomes the source of comfort and healing. The wounds that affect our families today are many, immense, and deep. I don't have time to analyze each one. But just to give you some examples. Financial constraints, unemployment, destitution, lack of access to basic human needs, the lack of education, economic and political policies that do not support the families. Of course, failed relationships, infidelity, sickness, disabilities, social, cultural, even religious exclusion or discrimination, human trafficking, child abuse, domestic violence, the abuse of women, prostitution, new forms of human slavery, wars, ethnic conflicts, climatic calamities, forced migration, displacement of peoples. All of these bring wounds to human persons and to families. And from your specific contexts, your countries, your regions, maybe you can add to the list that I have just presented. Open your eyes, listen to the cries of the wounded, see the wounds, and see the causes of those wounds. Wounds make persons, families, and communities vulnerable to manipulation, bitterness, despair, exploitation, and even vulnerable to evil, to sin. Some people fall into crime, criminality. They start thinking of evil deeds because of deep wounds. Interior division, the division within me, and the external division, conflicts, they all lead to alienation. I don't know who I am anymore. I don't know whether I am accepted by my family. I do not know whether I belong to society. I am an alien. I do not belong. I don't have a home. This is usually the experience of wounded people. Alienation, homelessness. You may have a big, beautiful house and still be homeless. For what is a home? A home is not measured by how many acres you have on which the building called the house sits. No. A home is the gift of a loving presence. I remember in my youth a beautiful song. It says, "A chair is still a chair, even when there's no one sitting there. But a chair is not a house, and the house is not a home when there's no one there to hold you tight, and no one there you can kiss goodnight." That's not the end of the song. It continues. A room is still a room, even when there's nothing there but gloom. But a room is not a house, and the house is not a home when the two of us are far apart and one of us has a broken heart. Hey, let me finish. I get wounded too. Now and then I call your name and suddenly your face appears. But it's just a crazy game. When it ends in tears. Then the plea, darling, have a heart. Don't let one mistake keep us apart. I'm not meant to live alone. Turn this house into a home. When I climb the stairs and turn the key, oh, please be there, still in love with me. That's a home. Not a house, but a home. A loving presence. The gift of a loving presence. Which leads us now to Jesus Christ. The ministry of Jesus. A certain author, Luciano Sandrin, notes that integral to the mission of Jesus, which is the proclamation of the reign of God, the kingdom of God, was the healing of the sick, the wounded, the proclamation of the kingdom of God, the dawning of the kingdom of God was very often accompanied by signs and wonders, especially those of healing. In Matthew 9, verse 35, Jesus continued his tour of all the towns and villages. He taught in their synagogues. He proclaimed the good news of God's reign. And he cured every sickness and disease. And Jesus instructed the 12 to do the same. In Matthew 10, 7-8, Jesus says, "As you go, make this announcement. The reign of God is at hand. Cure the sick, raise the dead, heal the leprous, and expel demons." The good news of the reign of God is manifested in healing as caring, assisting people, accompanying them, reconstituting relationships, bringing back a girl to life and restoring her to her family. When God rules, when God reigns, persons are saved, honored, and served with care. Where God rules, wounds are attended to. You see this in the Synoptics. You see this in the Gospel of St. John. There seems to be a pattern in Jesus' mission of proclaiming the kingdom accompanied by healing. There is compassion. Jesus is moved with compassion. Then Jesus cares. Included in the caring of Jesus is his anger towards the evil that befalls a person. And then the attention with which he cares for the person. Then comes faith. Usually the healed person manifests faith in Jesus. But in the end, Jesus would tell them to keep quiet. The humility of Jesus, the humility of the healer. The healer will not go around saying, hey, hey, you see that man? He used to be lame. He's able to walk now because of me. Praise me. No. The healer comes to proclaim the kingdom of God, not himself or herself. The proclamation of oneself is the way of the kingdom of this world. That's why the kingdoms of this world, operating on ambition, power, self-recognition, they inflict wounds. But Jesus' kingdom is always a humble, serving kingdom. That's why it heals by caring, by compassion, and by love. Some fathers of the church say that in the parable of the Good Samaritan, Jesus was really talking about himself. Someone attentive to those left dying on the roads. That is Jesus. He was really talking about himself. And we can agree, yes, he is the Good Samaritan. Every person wounded, even if a stranger, even if an enemy, I will love and care for. Remember, in the parable was a Samaritan, which at the time was considered an enemy of the Jews. But if you want to heal, the test is, are you willing to heal even your wounded enemy? Nobody claps. I caught you there. But Jesus stops and heals even those who plan to persecute him. Remember how in John 13, he washed the feet of his disciples, including those who had planned to betray him. You heal even your enemies. Why? Why? That is the way of the kingdom of God. Very different from the ways of the kingdoms of this world. We all know the parables of mercy in Luke 15. 3 parables, all about lost objects or persons. The lost sheep, the lost coin, and the lost son. All of them getting lost. But the 3 parables ended with rejoicing, with feasting. Why? Because the lost, now found, is coming home. When you look at the first parable, the lost sheep probably was sick or wounded. And from a purely pragmatic, economic reason, the shepherd should not leave unattended the 99 healthy sheep to search for the one who is wounded, sick, and lost. That wounded sheep is really a liability. But why? Why would the shepherd look for that sheep? Why will the woman look for one coin? And why will the father welcome with such extravagance the lost son? For only one reason. The sheep, though wounded and lost, is my own. It is mine. And if it cannot come home, I will carry it home. The elder brother castigated the father. This son of yours, you belong together. But the father said, your brother. The father wants the home to be made whole. And it would not be whole if the wounded brother would not be accepted. No other reason. You are mine, and my home will not be complete without you. You cannot come home, I will carry you home. This is how Jesus presents the kingdom of love and mercy. But Jesus does not only heal the symptoms of our wounds. He does not save us from our vulnerability and woundedness. He saves us in our wounds and vulnerability. He entered our woundedness. He became like us except sin. In his incarnation, he embraced a wounded world. He experienced being hunted down by an ambitious politician. He experienced being a refugee in Egypt. He experienced being lost as a teenager. He experienced being branded as crazy. He experienced not having a home. He experienced the taunt, the ridicule, even of religious leaders. He experienced betrayal of a friend. He experienced the humiliating death on the cross, given only to criminals. And he was buried in a borrowed tomb. Jesus heals by being wounded. And according to the letter to the Hebrews, he was perfected. He was made perfect as a compassionate high priest, as a compassionate brother, because he was tempted in every way that we are, except sin. He knows our wounds, and he transformed our wounds into the triumph of love. That's why even the resurrected Christ had the marks of wounds. The wounds will not disappear. In fact, it is the wounded one that saves. So, my dear brothers and sisters, since all of us are wounded, no one should be able to say, I have no gift of healing. No, our wounds will make us, if we want them to be, avenues of understanding, compassion, solidarity, and love. Those who are thirsty, come.